Most executive presence advice is about learning to do more, speak up more, be more visible, project more confidence, take up more space. For the next two patterns, the work is the opposite. One requires doing less. The other requires doing differently. And that distinction makes all the difference in whether the coaching actually works or just adds another layer of frustration. We are moving from expression gap patterns to two fundamentally different gap types. If the first two patterns were about what the room cannot see, these next two are about something the room sees just fine, but interprets in ways the leader does not expect. The leader is visible. The leader is active. The leader is contributing. But what the room experiences is not what the leader intends. And the third pattern is the one I find leaders resist the most, because it asks you to stop doing the exact thing that built your career. Consider a newly promoted SVP of engineering. In every previous role, he was the most technically capable person in the room. His team respects him deeply, his track record is impeccable, but his 360 feedback contains a paradox. He does everyone's job better than they do, but he never seems to be in charge. He answers every question in a meeting, volunteers for every high-stakes task, consistently works the longest hours on the team. His word count per meeting is triple anyone else's. When his direct reports bring him a difficult decision, instead of asking them what they recommend, he solves it himself, faster, more elegantly, and more completely than they could. His assessment data shows strong expertise scores and low authority scores. He is demonstrating competence in a role that now requires him to occupy authority. The behaviors that built his career, being the most prepared person in the room, having the right answer, delivering beyond expectations, those behaviors are now actively working against the perception he needs to create. His CEO's assessment, he runs a department of one, everyone else is an assistant. The team loves his competence, but they are not developing their own. And the organization sees a leader who cannot let go of the work that should belong to his team. I know this is uncomfortable to hear. You built your career on being the most capable person in the room. And now the role is asking you to let someone else hold that position while you do something entirely different. The coaching approach targets the shift from expert identity to leader identity. Restraint, not answering every question, not taking every task, speaking last instead of first, trusting that the team's work reflects on the leader, not just the leader's own output. This is not regression, it is operating in a different register. The register the role requires, the transition from proving value to projecting confidence. That transition does not happen by adding more skills. It happens by releasing the reflex to prove. The fourth pattern is different from all three you have seen so far. The leader did not change. The context changed. Picture a startup founder who joins a Fortune 500 board. The directness that the startup rewarded, fast decisions, no hedging, calling problems by their names, lands very differently here. The board culture rewards measured deliberation. Her first 3 board meetings produce the same pattern. She names the problem within 2 minutes, the room goes quiet, and afterward colleagues tell her she came across as aggressive. In her previous environment, that same behavior generated trust and credibility. Same words, same directness, completely different reception. Her 360 data splits cleanly by audience. High marks from colleagues who share her background. Low marks from stakeholders embedded in the new culture. Neither group is wrong. They are evaluating the same behavior against different definitions of what executive looks like. She is experiencing the same word presence, meaning fundamentally different things in 2 different rooms. The startup room valued speed and directness. The boardroom values measured consensus. Her style did not break. The context shifted. Before coaching this leader on her behavior, the first question is whether the feedback is about her or about the organization's implicit definition of what executive looks like. That is the organizational audit. It comes before the coaching plan, because coaching a leader for a systemic problem does not close the gap. When the work is individual, it is repertoire expansion, reading what this context calls executive and adding it to her range, not changing her personality, not becoming someone else, expanding the behavioral repertoire she can draw from. You have now seen 4 patterns: the invisible thinker, the over-preparer, the proving leader, the culture mismatch. Which of these 4 sounds most like the feedback you have received? You do not need to be certain. Just notice which one creates the strongest recognition. Which description made you think, that sounds like what I hear? All that answer. We are going to test it against data in Module 3. 2 expression gap patterns, one who thinks invisibly, one who performs preparation. 1 authority gap pattern, the leader who proves instead of projects. 1 context gap pattern, the leader whose style fits one room but not another. Each requires different assessment instruments. Each requires different coaching approaches. Generic executive presence advice treats them as interchangeable. They are not. The diagnostic question is, which pattern is yours? And the answer determines every intervention that follows. You can now name the 4 patterns. You have a sense of which one might be yours. In Module 2, we go deeper into each of the 3 gap types: authority, context, and expression, with the assessment instruments and behavioral markers that make the diagnosis precise. Because the right diagnosis is what makes everything after it works.